course, I'm a physician assistant. I've actually been helping people get into PA school since my first year of PA school. Like literally as soon as I got my acceptance letter, I was like, I need to like teach people how to do this because this is hard. Unless your dad's a PA, your mom's a PA, someone's a doctor, like you don't know how to do this and all these steps. And then by the time you get there, it's like 2 or 3 years down the line. And so now you feel lost, discouraged. So what I'm trying to do is help people who do not have the support and the guidance to kind of have those things that it took me like 5 years to learn. And also, can everybody hear me over there? Mm-hmm. Like I was saying earlier, it's cough and flu season and I'm just getting coughed on at work constantly. And speaking of that, I didn't actually prepare anything about how I got into PA school or being a PA, so I can leave that to the Q&A if anyone's curious. What I wanted to focus this talk on is getting you guys where you want to go. All right, does that sound good? Mm-hmm. Okay, so first things first, who gets in, right? Everybody's always asking me on my YouTube, on my TikTok, like, what are my stats? These are my stats. Am I gonna get in? And all I can say is like, it depends. I can't tell you for sure. Like, it's not like if you get a 3.61 GPA and 771 hours, you're like guaranteed. Like, there's no guarantees. It's super subjective. But stats do kind of help us to see if like you're in the ballpark of people who are at least competitive, or if you have no chance, or if you're just like more or less a shoo-in, right? So, oh, it's touchscreen?
Yeah.
Oh man, you're fancy. I'm gonna sit down. Okay, so, am I still on the camera?
Yes. Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so the PA Life, if you haven't checked out this website, it's very comprehensive as far as like essays, interviews, all kinds of stuff. But my favorite thing they do is who gets into PA school. And so this article has been updated this year. Before that it was like 5 years old. So these stats are actually very up to date. So I just kind of want to read some of this. So Leslie Mean, you know, the average, is 25 years old. So very few people actually go straight through. People always want to say like, okay, I graduate college and I immediately start PA school. That's extremely rare unless you do a 3+2 kind of a program. So Leslie is 25 years old. It looks like she took 2 or 3 gap years, depending. And she is a single Caucasian female. If you've ever seen PA school classes, just go on their websites. Everybody is a Caucasian female. Almost everybody anyway. So those demographics are changing slowly, but that is still by far the average. She has a 3.6 overall GPA, a 3.5 science GPA, and please don't get discouraged if you don't have these things. This is just the average. And her GRE is 303, which is okay. She has 2 years, about 4,000 hours of clinical hands-on experience, working as a CNA, because that's the most common pre-PA medical experience. And she has a long history of volunteer work, which exemplifies her activity or her desire to help the community. And there's a bunch of other stuff that they wrote. And I just want to go by age here, just in case anybody in this room or anybody out there on YouTube or anything is watching. So pretty small minority, 22 to 23, actually, it's a good chunk actually. I guess a lot of people do go straight through, but the average, because it includes the older folks, is 25. So 24 to 25 is the biggest chunk, 26, 27, 28, 29, and 38 plus, there's 0.4%. So if you happen to be 40 and trying to go to PA school, that's also a possibility for you. You're just in a very small minority. All right, like I said before, large majority is female. And okay, I don't think there's really anything else important here. So one thing I really wanted to bring to your attention is this. So Widener University, they were nice enough to share their actual rubric. Literally how they score pre-PA applicants, exactly how they want you basically to present. Most universities, this is kind of kept hush-hush. You don't really know what they're looking for. All you know is GPA, volunteering, experience, etc. These people actually show you exactly how many points you get for each stat. So I thought this was incredible. I don't think every school is exactly like this, but they're more or less similar. So for instance, 3.5 GPA is kind of a good cutoff for, you know, good to excellent. So 3.5 to 4.0, that's the maximum score, 20 points. You have a 3.2 to a 3.5, 15 points, 2.7 to 3.2, they call that low, and then I'm assuming anything below 2.7 is pretty hard to get considered, but that's just me talking. Personal statement is worth as much as GPA in this case, which I think is huge. And we're definitely gonna talk in depth about the personal statement. But what is good about a personal statement? Strong statement around desire to be a PA, understanding the scope of practice, and identifying your own strengths and weaknesses. And also if you happen to have any poor classes or any kind of personal situations, Personal statement is an excellent place to put that in. And then it kind of goes down the line as far as what goes medium, what's lower, and that kind of a thing. What I actually thought was funny reviewing this is 0 points for a low standard personal statement does not present a strong desire to be a PA. So this is like, I am honestly just using this as a stepping stone to medical school. That'll be a 0. Don't ever say that. Letters of recommendation, another surprise to me, those 20 points, worth as much as GPA and worth as much as your personal statement. Community engagement, again, volunteering. So all the stuff that when you look online, when you ask people how to get into PA school, all the stuff that they're mentioning is literally straight off this rubric. Write an excellent personal statement, have excellent grades, get good letters of recommendation, and volunteer. All those things, at least to this university, are worth even. And again, for different universities, that's different. And then they just average those points and they determine who gets an interview. And then interviews are graded kind of in a similar fashion. Okay? Any questions so far, like burning question? Yes?
Where is this found at?
This is, I wish I could pronounce the name of the university, but it's Widener or Wiedener.
Did you just go to their like university website?
Yeah, I literally just Googled physician assistant school admission rubric.
Okay.
And this one I only found because I was doing a mock interview with someone applying to this school.
Okay.
And also now you have all these so you can share them. You know, it's public knowledge, public record. Yes?
So does every PA school have something like this, but they just don't publish it basically?
I can't speak for every PA school because there's like 300 of them.
Yeah.
I'm just going to assume, because if you put yourself in the shoes of admissions, you gotta standardize things. You can't just subjectively say, well, we like her more than him, or him more than her, right? So a rubric is probably used in some fashion at every school, but how that happens, I can't tell you. One thing about me, I've never been officially involved in the admissions process because it would be a massive conflict of interest. So I don't actually know behind the scenes more than just the school that I went to when I was involved there, and then the things that I've just heard from other people. But I can imagine, yes, just how they weigh these things might be a little different. One thing actually quick about that, if you notice some schools have very different requirements, right? Different minimum GPAs, different hours requirements. So that kind of speaks to their priorities. If they require 2,000 hours, they might value experience more than GPA. If they only require, 500 hours, they're gonna be a strictly GPA kind of a school, right? So those are kind of things to keep in mind.
What's the highest minimum requirement in schools that you've seen, just like browsing around?
Highest requirement for GPA?
For patient care hours.
I think I've seen 2,000 somewhere. I wanna say
Yeah.
MedX.
Yeah, I've seen that.
One of the MedXs, because there's like, I think 2 or 3 MedXs, but one of them is 2,000, which isn't really that much. It's 2,000 hours is, it's 1 year of 40 hours a week. So literally just 1 year, right? For a profession that's literally founded on people who have experience, I think it's kind of reasonable. Is that easy to get while you're in college now? So, sorry. So maybe there are people who tend to be like a year older, yes?
Do you think they like manually go through this, or do you think there's like a software scanning buzzwords to mark these things up? Like, how do you think?
I would imagine it's gotta be manual. I mean, they might have some sort of software for just the stats, like they look at patient care experience, but even those, they still have to kind of look at them individually and see if it really is patient care, right? Like you might have categorized it patient care, but you might have also categorized, your job at Citgo pumping gas as patient care, and they have to go read that individually and be like, that's not patient care, disqualified. Just kidding, they never do that. But you know what I mean? So like those kind of things are subjective. GPA, if they're really, really nice and holistic, they might even go through that and kind of calculate it themselves. But more than likely, they'll just go on CASPA's GPA. So those things might be, using AI or some sort of software, but a lot of this stuff is very subjective. Like how do you have AI to determine strong statement versus weak statement, right? They gotta read everything. Any other burning questions? We got like 3 hours, I promise. There's plenty of time for every question. Just if someone has something jumping out at them, just like let me know. Good? Okay. All right, discuss each part of the rubric. I think we just did. Discuss some case studies. Okay, so GPA is kind of the big one. Just a show of hands, who here is a freshman? 0 people determine they want to be a PA that early in their career. Good. Sophomore? Okay, we have a couple of newbies. You guys are way ahead of your competition. Juniors? Everyone's a senior? Everybody else is a senior? Okay. All right, I'm not gonna ask what your GPAs are, but at this point, they're more or less solidified. So if they are in this good category, 3.5, hopefully, if not, then at least like 3.2, you're more or less pretty solid. A lot of people that came to me early on in my kind of advising career, they were way below that, 2.9, 2.8, 2.7. And there's been a lot of various ways I've seen people fix that. Master's degrees, post-bacs like I did, like I was a 2.9 GPA guy. I did a post-bac, 4.0 in the post-bac, got straight in, right? So you basically just have to demonstrate good academic ability because PA school is hard. It's really that simple. How you do that is kind of up to you, but there's a lot of different ways to do that. So that's GPA. We can certainly talk more about that, but I think it's pretty straightforward overall. Prerequisites. So prerequisites are a big one. That's one thing that I definitely want to do more research on, but there's basically kind of a standard list of prerequisites that most programs use, varying by just a couple. And this can be found on any website. So again, I'm on Widener's here, and you can literally just find prerequisites. If I were more prepared, I'd have this ready. Where's it at? There we go. Admissions requirements. I'm sorry?
Yes.
There it is, prerequisite courses. So these are pretty standard. Biology, micro, I haven't seen everybody, but at least general bio, general chem, some sort of upper level bio. A&P 1 and 2 is on every single one of them. Gen chem, gen bio, every single one of them. OChem, I think on most. Stats or some sort of a math class, yes. At least one psych or sociology, yes. Medical terminology, yes and no. But these are very standard. The thing that you definitely need to make sure with your prerequisites is that, especially for those of you applying later, which is thankfully none of you, but if you take a couple gap years off or something like that, some of them might expire. If it's been 5 or 10 years, depending on the school, that can disqualify you straight out. So for instance, kind of a cautionary tale. So one person I just did a pre-PA counseling with got rejected by 14 schools. 14 out of 14 didn't get a single interview, acceptance, nothing. This girl had somewhere around the low to mid 3s for GPA. She went to, I think, Dartmouth, some Ivy League school. And then she got a master's, and her GPA of the master's was like a 3.8. And she got rejected straight out by every one of them. And when we dug into her record, we realized she didn't have some of the prerequisites. She thought that her master's classes counted as some of the prerequisites, which I'm not certain which schools count that and which ones do not. But I think that's probably what held her application back, and I'm still following up with her if that's really what it was. But prerequisites are literally prerequisites, like you must have them.
Another thing that I've noticed too, like the schools that I'm looking at, some of them require medical terminology like you're saying, and some of them don't. But you also have to look at the medical terminology credit, because like this one, it says 1 credit, and most community colleges offer it as 1 credit, but then George Mason offers it as 3 credits, and a lot of universities require a 3-credit medical terminology class.
Yeah, you can really get into some semantics there. So kind of go over application with a fine-tooth comb. If the programs are very holistic and they're not just trying to like get through the applications as quick as possible, they will catch that and they probably won't mind. Or they might say, hey, take a 3-credit med term class before you matriculate. They might do that, but they very well may not. The more applications they get, the more competitive this gets, the harder and like the less likely that's gonna be. Also some universities, a full-time class is 4 credits. Sometimes the lab is extra, sometimes it's not. But this one, for instance, 3 credits. But for some reason with Gen Chem, they want 4 credits. But with Bio 3, like that makes no sense to me, right? Like all the schools that I went to, a full-time course was 4 credits. Lab was an extra 5th credit. These guys want 4 in this one, 3 in this one. It honestly doesn't make sense, but it could kind of burn you if you don't meet the credits even by 1 credit, right? So do your research. Absolutely don't get stuck there. That's prerequisites. Okay. Patient care experience, so that's kind of the other big bucket here.
I have
Also,
a question.
yes.
Sorry. So I have a question about one of my prerequisites. So my first semester at a community college, I got a C in general bio, and I'm retaking it next semester before I apply. But I was just wondering, is that a good thing? Because I saw somewhere that they said it's not good to retake because they want to see you instead to take an upper level class to show. Because if you retake, they're like, you're basically retaking, so you know what you're gonna get. Obviously, you're gonna get an A because you already took the class.
Hopefully.
Yeah, but mainly my concern is that is it a good idea to retake or just try to take a higher upper level class?
Did you get that advice on one of my channels? Because I've said that exact thing.
You did?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
I
like
do
that's
follow
usually the.
you, then probably.
Oh yeah. That also could have come from somebody I interviewed, like several of the deans of admissions. I've heard that advice a lot of times, and there's a couple of reasons why you definitely want to retake something, and that's if it's a prerequisite.
Okay.
So, for instance, some schools need their prerequisites to be a C or better.
Yeah.
Some are a B or better.
Yeah.
Right. So if you got a C, you're literally disqualified until you have a B in that prerequisite.
Yes.
So in that case, you'd have to retake it.
Okay.
You know, if none of your schools that you're applying to need a B, if they're all okay with a C, not a C minus,
Okay.
a C.
Mhm.
That's another thing that this girl I just talked about that burned her. She had a C minus in a prerequisite.
Oh.
So that could disqualify you just like right there, right? So if all the schools require a C and you got that C, maybe consider taking a more upper level chem course and show that you can do it and get a good grade, right?
Okay.
That would be just as good. But if you do need the prerequisite, you 100% do need to take that.
Okay.
So kind of be strategic with it,
Okay.
right? If you don't, if you know that you stink at chem, if you just know that it's really hard for you, maybe retake it, boost the GPA, prove yourself in some other course, right? Be smart about it.
Okay.
You know, like I hated chem. In my post-bac, it was my only B+, and people cheated also, but we'll go with that. But either way, like I hated chem. And so if I was trying to prove myself, I'd probably take a bio, not a chem, just because I know chem it's not my strong suit, right? So just be very strategic with it.
Gotcha.
But first and foremost, make sure you're meeting the requirements. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Thank
Yeah.
you.
I have a question bouncing off of her, so
Mhm.
I changed my major like 3 times, and I took,
Indecisive?
yeah, a little bit.
We
But, I was an engineer major, like my freshman year, I only stayed in it for a semester, but I got a C, and the way Mason does their engineering classes, like, we take Gen Chem for engineers, and then it's just regular Gen Chem, so I got a C in that, but then when I took actual Gen Chem at higher grade, and our grades are like, the way they put them in, like, for our transcripts, would that make a difference, like, if I got a higher grade in actual Gen Chem, but I have a C in engineers, like, I wish it would be removed.
So
But it won't, 'cause
nothing's
it's
gonna be
a
removed.
class, yes.
you know, so in your case, you're good. You know, you got the requirement, you got a C or better, and even a B or better, so you're good there. But every single undergraduate course you ever take in your life, over the course of 100 years, they're all averaged.
Okay.
So they never, you know, they never disappear. So for you, that C and that A, along with all your other classes, are just averaged.
Okay.
So you're good. You don't really need to take it again.
Yeah, I'm not taking that.
Right. But yeah, that's the frustrating part. Even if you retake something, it doesn't replace anything. It just averages out GPA wise. The only reason to retake it is if you really, really need the requirement, right? Otherwise, you know, other classes would be better. Anybody else have anything on that? Everyone's good. Yeah, if you do, please just jump in. This is for you guys. And yeah, I definitely don't have 2.5 hours worth of notes, so we're good no matter what. Just jump in anytime you feel like jumping in. Okay, where were we? We're on patient care experience. The next kind of big bucket, getting away from grades. So what patient care experience counts? That's a super duper common question. And my response on YouTube, TikTok is always check your school's website because every school is different. So for instance, where's it? Hours requirement. So this one actually, Widener, you might want to take notes, only 500. You know, that's like 3-4 months worth of full-time work. You can get that done in a semester on weekends. You know, that's a whole lot of nothing, but their GPA is probably gonna be a little bit higher weight. So for these guys, athletic trainer, medical foreman, obviously, unless you're in the military, you're not gonna get that. A medical caregiver is an underappreciated one. So sometimes you need a CNA, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you can just kind of sign up, take a CPR course, and you could be a medical caregiver in someone's home. Most of what you're doing is just kind of sitting with them, make sure nothing happens, do CPR if it does, call 911, maybe give them their meds, maybe report to the nurse, but essentially you're just kind of chilling with them and watching TV the whole time. Very easy way to rack up hours. You don't really need a certification a lot of the time, so I'm not sure why more people don't do that. Emergency department technician, that's kind of hard to get into. EMT, I heard you guys talking about that before, a very big barrier to entry, 2 to 6 month course. Medical scribe, a lot of schools don't count medical scribe, a lot of schools do. My school did, I did this for a few hundred hours. I think it's excellent experience, but some schools do not count it. So the whole patient care versus healthcare experience thing is huge. Some schools will literally count medical scribe as medical experience, which means 0 patient care experience, which means you've met 0 of those hours of the requirement. So be careful selecting a job. I've never seen medical assistant or CNA not included, so maybe consider doing one of those things. Although I think personally scribing is much better experience. But these are just some very common ones. There's definitely some more like niche jobs that would count as medical experience, they just happen to not be on here. Best way to find out if that counts is talk to the school, right? But if you meet the two requirements of you're paid and you have some sort of level of responsibility personally for patient care, it's usually gonna be fine. Just do a very good description. So those are kind of like the big buckets of what's required to get in. There's also some ancillary ones. Some schools have a very strong in-state preference. I don't know if you've done a lot of research on their websites, but some schools, I've seen in Virginia, I've definitely seen in North Carolina. If you're a North Carolina resident, or if you went to undergrad in North Carolina, you're applying from a certain list of schools, they give you legitimate, like, serious preference. As in, if you meet this GPA and this many hours, you're guaranteed an interview, that kind of thing. So you guys are in, is this Virginia?
Yeah.
Or is this Maryland?
Virginia.
Or Virginia, I don't know, I can't remember where the heck I am half the time. Yeah, so maybe check Virginia schools. How many schools could there possibly be in Virginia? Maybe 10?
I think there's like 5 or 6.
That's it?
Yeah.
I would, if I were you, maybe like you could just assign one of the club members to do this. But I would literally peruse the websites of every one of those schools and see if they have, you know, in-state preference. For if you went to undergrad in Virginia or if you have residency. And then if you don't have residency, get a license here ASAP and establish residency. Or whatever state you want to go to PA school, right? So that's a big one. Being bilingual, especially schools in like Texas, California, border states, that kind of thing. Sometimes if you have Spanish speaking ability, they'll give you that. There's like unofficial points for diversity as far as being, you know, whatever group that they're looking for. I think it's now illegal to make that official, but I'm no expert on this. It's never gonna be like on a rubric like this, I can tell you that. But, you know, schools definitely have statements to diversity on their websites, so they do actually have that as a preference. What do we got here? Okay. Anything else before we move on to CASPA by itself? Good?
Have you noticed, if there's any schools that are like, if it's been a while since you've been working towards getting patient care hours, where they're like, you have to have patient care experience within the last like 5 years or something? Like if you were doing work in patient care before school. And
Like
then
yourself?
Well, I did do a little
Perhaps.
bit, but yes, yeah.
Yeah, I haven't
something
seen
like
that myself. I've seen
Okay.
that with courses. So prereqs, either 5 or 10 years, depending on the school,
Okay,
you know, must be completed within this many.
right.
I ran into that because I graduated in 2011 and I matriculated in 2019. So prereqs, you know, they do expire. I think it's usually 10 years. 5 years would be pretty unfair. So yeah, with prereqs, I've seen that. With experience, I have not. All that being said, you should probably still have some hands-on experience within the last couple of years because you're gonna, you know, get rusty, that kind of thing. So volunteer, do something to be involved, but officially no. Yes.
I have seen though some schools, I think there was one in like New York, like UNY, they require you to have so many community hours within a certain time span. So like you have to have, I don't know, 100, 200 hours within the past like 6 months or like year or something.
Sure.
which is
For
weird.
community service.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was weird.
Yeah.
Never really emphasized that.
I haven't seen that a whole lot, but that's actually a lot of hours.
Yeah, it was a lot. Let me look it up.
Sure. Yeah. I definitely, like when you're filling out CASPA, I wouldn't just like apply to schools willy-nilly because you're gonna be wasting like $100 a pop if you don't meet the requirements. So things like that, like who has 200 community service hours, right?
Yeah.
Like you kind of get stuck with that. So definitely do your research, and if you have a weird requirement like that, make sure you either meet it or are very much in the process of meeting it, or just don't apply to that school, because then you're not qualified, right? So yeah, that's definitely the highest one I've ever heard of for community service, and also community service being required.
Yeah, and so it's SUNY downstate, a minimum of 250 hours non-clinical volunteer work within the last 5
Whoa.
years. So it's a long time span, but it's a lot. That is a lot of
That's a lot.
volunteer hours.
Yeah, I mean, at 40 hours a week, how many weeks is that? It's 5, 6, almost 7 weeks. That's almost 2 months of full-time volunteering. Who does that? But apparently people who apply to that program do.
Good-hearted people.
Yes, let's go with it. Or people who don't need an income after college.
Right, right.
I don't know, man. Like, there's definitely weird requirements like that. But good on them. You know, they're obviously looking for a very specific kind of person.
Right.
So yeah, do your research. When you're filling out CASPA, has anyone filled out CASPA yet?
I've done a little bit of it.
You kind of like logged in?
Yeah, I logged in, looked at some of the universities, like looked at the supplemental essays just to like see what I maybe was getting myself into, like how many
It's a good way
were
to say it.
required, you know, looking at the transcript thing, looking at personal statements.
Yep. And also just all the various boxes to
Yeah.
type things into and
Yeah.
entering every class one by one by one by one.
Yes. Yep.
It's a lot. It's definitely daunting. The good thing is if you happen to be a reapplicant, they can copy most of it over, so at least you have that going for you.
Do you know what doesn't copy over?
I can't remember. I can't remember. You certainly shouldn't copy your essay over. You know, write a new one.
Subtopic. For those, so we don't know, we actually do have a CASPA walkthrough coming up in 2
Good.
weeks. So if you don't know, please come to that.
Okay, good. Yeah, save your very specific CASPA questions for that because it's been whenever 2017 was. That's when I filled out CASPA.
Yes.
Or 2018, I can't remember. But yeah, I'm not the CASPA person. A part of my book kind of involves like certain things about CASPA, but it's nowhere near like a comprehensive walkthrough like that. But first and foremost, you want to figure out what schools you're applying to for those reasons that we just talked about. Are you even qualified? Is there some weird requirement that you may not meet, or can you meet it? The first thing you want to do after you've made your list is find out if they are rolling or traditional. Does anyone know what rolling versus traditional means?
Yeah.
You probably do.
Rolling means that like as soon as you submit your applicant, they review it, and then traditional would be like there's 6 months that they have their application open, and then regardless of whenever you submit it on the second day versus the last day that you're able to get your application verified, you will be eligible.
Yeah. So I wonder if we can like control find it on here, but if you peruse the website, you can certainly find it. You can even like Google like is Widener or is, you know, NC State or anything rolling, and that's very important because your strategy changes completely.
I know that Eastern Virginia is, it's a traditional, it's not rolling admission, so like they have theirs open for like 8 months.
Yeah.
It's a long
Until like
time.
September.
Yeah, I think it's until January, like they open
January?
it, yeah, and then
Wow.
they review it in like
Okay.
April, the following year.
Wow.
It's a long time.
So anyone still applying now, we're
It's
gonna
a
definitely
long time.
recommend that one.
Yeah, it's a long time.
The big difference with strategy is once CASPA opens, April 23rd, 24th, whatever it may be, if you're applying to rolling schools, you wanna be ready to hit submit that day. Because they're starting to judge people and like get people for interviews immediately. And if they fill up, if they're like pretty dang close to filling up their class within the first week, then they are. You know, and then it's over. Or they'll hold like 1 or 2, 5 spots for like exceptional candidates, but then it gets harder and harder and harder. So I would definitely, if you have rolling schools on your list, I would get ready to apply in April. Unless you're missing a course, you're missing hours, something like that. But if you're kind of in the process of getting them, even if the course is in progress, I would still just hit apply. The classes or the programs that are traditional that collect all their applications at once, totally different strategy. You can wait all the way up until the deadline, give it like 2 weeks, make sure that your application is verified, but you apply close to the deadline because that gives you the most amount of time to get hours, volunteer hours, take classes, that kind of thing. So those are kind of like the twin strategies, and they're very different. And yes, you can't submit twice, right? So you can submit your CASPA once to all the rolling ones, and then keep putting stuff in, and then submit again.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought it was just like you submitted once.
You can change things and then submit a second time. Like if you don't have the schools on your little list in CASPA, you can add schools and just say submit to this one now.
Oh, okay, but like your initial application is.
Yeah, the initial, like you have your list of schools, but then if you do it again, you can add the rolling ones, right?
Okay.
So personally, that's what I do. Question?
So if you graduate in May and it opens in April, so would we submit our unofficial transcript and then resubmit our official?
No, you submit an official one.
Official, you can submit an official
Yeah.
a month before. Can you?
Well, if some of the classes are not done, you would just have them in progress in CASPA.
Okay.
Yeah, there is a category for that, like I'm still enrolled in these classes.
Okay.
You know, especially like prereqs, that would get you not disqualified because they're like, okay, let's consider this person because they're still taking this prereq. You know?
I also know that there's like in conjunction with that, there's a plan to take course, so like if you're trying to take organic chem or micro and you haven't taken it yet and you graduated and it wasn't a part of your degree pathway, you can put like planning to take, and then they'll see that you're gonna be taking that
Okay.
for their prerequisites.
What were we just on a second ago? Okay, yeah, rolling versus non-rolling. Then, I mean, very basic tips for CASPA, stuff that I've seen that's surprising. You know, everything needs to be uniform, spacing, capitalization. You'd be shocked, especially in like the descriptions of experience, like your volunteering, your cheerleading captain, your swim team captain, whatever, like those experiences. Someone puts like bullet points on one and then a paragraph for the other. And then like a sentence without any periods on another one. And it just looks like a little kid did it. Like uniform, right? Same exact format, same amount of spacing, same capitalization. I've seen people do like physician assistant in one and then PA in another. Like you wanna be uniform, right? So just make everything look neat, the same, that kind of thing. References, letters of recommendation. In this one, I was actually shocked at how highly they rank that. You know, I was thinking it would be 5 points compared to 20 for GPA, but in this case, it's as high as GPA, 20 points. So you really want really good letters. So what does this school say? Strong letters of recommendation, all reflect excellent ratings because they kind of give the person a rating system, you know, a Likert scale out of 5 for certain categories. This one might say average letter ratings between good and excellent. So someone gave you like a 4 out of 5, you're already out of the excellent category there. So that kind of a thing. So basically, unless someone gives you all 5s and just like gives you a glowing review, you might be missing out on points on the letters of recommendation. Also, who should give you a letter of recommendation? There's no official guidance here, but you want at least 3. They allow up to 5, so I'd probably do all 5 if you can. But you want a professor, somebody that's gonna attest to your academic ability. You want a physician assistant because they would demonstrate that you know what a PA is, you appreciate it, they can see you doing this job, you know, you have the capacity. You want someone maybe to talk about your character. The coolest one I've ever seen is someone, there was like a policeman, an old policeman that kind of raised her. It was almost like a second father, and he wrote her this beautiful letter of recommendation, like a family friend. Don't have a family member do it, that would be probably not good. But someone that you just like know really well, maybe a nurse, maybe a physician, other medical folks, just other people, but you definitely want a PA and a professor and some sort of a personal reference, if possible. Where are we? Letters of recommendation. Okay, and finally, the personal statement. Has anyone written their personal statement? You have? You're working on it?
It was like very bare bones, and then I had someone read it and they were like, rewrite it. So
Really?
It was not good, yeah.
Careful who you get advice from on these things, you know?
Well, she was accepted into the school I was looking into, so I was like, this.
She would be a
probably knows
very
what
good person to
she's
ask.
doing, yeah.
Absolutely. But like, just because someone's a doctor or a PA does not mean they know how to write at all. Yes?
For the recommendation from the professor, should it be
Mhm.
like from a professor you took a prereq with, or does it?
It'll be good.
matter?
I mean, any professor that you took any course with, I'd say.
Okay.
You know, prereq, sure. Preferably something upper level.
Yeah.
Like, let's say you took the hardest course possible, I don't know, biochem, molecular bio, something like that. You got an A, or let's say, this would be like the optimal letter, like the best letter ever. Let's say you started off with like C's and D's or something, and then you somehow pulled it up to an A in a hard science course. That would be the best professor. And just literally have them tell about that, right? Because that shows your progress, you're able to like handle adversity, you're able to like be challenged and then come up and like be able to, you know, handle a hard course. That's like 10 out of 10, the best kind of letter. Is everyone gonna have that? No. But somebody who can attest to your academic ability in any way, shape, or form. Do you see why that would kind of be the best?
Yeah.
Cool.
Mhm.
That's why this is first. Literally, that's why this is first, because PA school is super duper hard. The last thing they want is for you to fail, because now you're failing yourself, you're failing the school's pass or attrition rate goes down. God forbid you pass school, but then you fail the PANCE, then their PANCE score goes down. You're taking a spot away from somebody else that could be a provider. Like it's just not good to have somebody fail out of school. So they're trying as hard as they can to ensure that doesn't happen. The way they do that is by looking at your GPA and by seeing if you struggled academically, if you're able to kind of like pull yourself out of that, right? So you definitely want that. So if you can have a professor write you a letter like that, that would be prime. Where are we at? Okay, personal statement. So I was preparing these notes in the parking garage over there, like 500 feet away, and this is what I came up with. If you haven't noticed, I do literally everything last minute, and somehow it just kind of usually works out. So finally, the personal statement. We know that we want to be PAs, of course we do. We're taking all these classes, we're putting in all this work, we're making all these sacrifices, but then when it comes down to telling people why we want to do this, we freeze up and we have no idea what to say. Why is that? Well, because we're science people, we're medical people, we're not writers. It's actually kind of unfair for us to be expected to be excellent writers when that's not what we're trying to do with our lives. So with that said, we are trying to be medical providers, and our job is to communicate. It's not to write, Pulitzer Prize essays or a book, but it is to communicate. So the essay, the interview is testing your skills in communication. Can you get what's in your brain out of your mouth in a way that somebody else understands it? Ask some of my patients and some of my staff. I struggle with that tremendously to this day, but I'm getting better. But they basically want to make sure that you can communicate and also that you really want to be in this profession, right? That's the whole purpose of the essay. So, where was I? Testing to see your ability to communicate and to express yourself. So, what I wanted to do to show you exactly how this works, I know I'm off camera now, is to go through an exercise in my book, step-by-step physician assistant school, personal statement writing. It's that hard and people struggle with it that much that I had to write a whole book, that people are actually buying. So like, it's a thing. But I wanted to see if there was a single brave volunteer that wants to go through this exercise and kind of map out their personal statement. And if there's not a volunteer, I'm gonna start bribing you. I'll give you guys a second to think about it while I find the page.
I'll volunteer.
Yeah?
Volunteers.
Just because you know what the bribe is. Okay, cool.
I'll come up there.
Right here. And you can absolutely be off camera if you don't want to be on YouTube. Okay, and for her bravery, I'm going to give her a bribe. You can select a Starbucks cup.
Oh my god, yay! See?
Everyone's like, damn, I should have volunteered now.
Cool.
So yeah, you get to call dibs on one of those.
Okay,
It's probably gonna be that one.
No problem.
It's a tough choice.
It is tough. I like the straw cups.
I think they're both actually cold cups, because that one's like lighter than it looks. Does that change your mind?
No.
The one with the straw?
Yeah, I want to do straw one.
That's the one I selected. That's the only one I liked.
Yeah, I like straws.
Mhm.
See, I have that Mason one. It's this orange one right
orange
here
one?
that I got for free.
That
Yeah.
one's way better.
Yeah, this one will probably still carry a little bit more, keep things cooler.
Hopefully, I just think it's pretty. It's like holiday.
It is. I like it.
Yeah, and then the Starbucks, cashier picked out the other one. So that's mine. Anyway, okay. So you think you want to be a PA?
I do. I
Right.
know I want to be a PA.
Can you remember exactly when you knew for the first time, or it's just like you've always known?
No, I'd like to think that the first time that I really thought about it was after I got diagnosed with my autoimmune disease, celiac disease, and I'd gone years and years and years going to doctors, going to specialists, going to pediatricians, and nobody knew anything, and I don't really feel like they took the time to listen to me. Also, I was like a child, and my dad also wasn't like super helpful with facilitating that. But by the time I was 21 and I finally was like spending some time with my doctors after changing them over because nobody was helping, that I had this PA who like took significant time to talk to me and talk through like my symptoms and then put them in different categories of different disease pathways. And she's like, I think this might be celiac disease. And I was like, I have no idea what that was. I had a DNA test done and I went in and I was like thinking it might have been something related, but I had no idea what it was again. And then after that, like it just totally changed my life. Like it really did just change the course of my life and how I carried myself, how I learned about myself, how I grew, and then I was able to practice that in the field as a medic as well, because that was around the time that I was going to medic school. And I was able to advocate for patients and educate them because like living in a rural area, they don't have the education or the resources to get to doctors to have that support. And sometimes when they call 911, like that's the only time they're able to be heard. Because when they go to the ED, like the ED doc's
There's no
gonna
time.
come by and be like, hey, what's wrong? Okay, cool, let's order some stuff.
Still alive,
They'll help.
you're good.
Right, yeah.
Yep.
So there's
Fair.
that. And then it just kind of propelled forward with seeing other individuals who I knew go to PA school and then coming
So the one moment when you were like, this is what I'm gonna do,
Mm-hmm.
that's when you were a kiddo and you got diagnosed?
No, I was 21.
You said going in as a child. Oh, it's been going on since you were a
Since I was
child,
a
but you got
child.
diagnosed at 21.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. And then that PA's kind of presence and taking time for you and actually having the right diagnosis
Right.
that changed your
Yeah.
life, that was the moment.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep, that was the moment.
so that was the time.
That was the moment.
That was the time when you, beyond a shadow of a doubt, knew that you wanted to do exactly what this PA was doing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Where are we? Okay, imagine that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Who were you with? Was it just you and the PA?
Yeah, it was just me and the PA.
Okay. What was going on in the room?
It was a one-on-one conversation of
Mhm.
direct communication. They were asking me personal questions about myself, my lifestyle, my extracurriculars, what I was doing. They were interested in even like my personal life, of like my work life, and how maybe that could have been a part of my disease as well. So once they were able to diagnose me, they gave me all these other resources. It wasn't just a diagnosis that they gave me, like they were giving me their own like personal interest. Like she brought in her family and said, oh, my family and my sister has celiac. And I know that when she saw a dietitian, like it changed her life around. And I really think that this is gonna be even more helpful to like propel your life forward in healing and recovering as well. And it did.
Absolutely.
It really was. If I didn't see a dietitian, I don't know where I'd be.
Let's try to remember some small details.
Okay.
Not like grand overarching things, but small details. Were you sitting,
I was sitting.
standing?
I was sitting.
Sitting down.
Yep, sitting on the exam table.
Okay. Do you remember what the PA was wearing, what they looked like?
The PA was wearing, she had a dress on that came below the knee. She was wearing flats. Her hair was nicely put together. It was down. It wasn't overly zealous. She was wearing some gold earrings that were just small hoops. And she had her coat on, her white coat.
How did you feel about what she was wearing?
I felt like it was very appropriate. I'd seen her like several times before then as well, and each time she had appropriate wear clothing on. So either another time that I'd seen her, she was wearing some black slacks. Slacks?
Slacks.
Slacks.
She's always dressed professional.
Yeah, she was
put
always
together.
dressed professionally, put together. She had a very calm demeanor. She always looked me in the eye. We always had direct eye contact, and it was always nice and slow. She wasn't speaking too quickly for me to not understand. And she always gave me enough time to speak what I needed to speak about. She didn't immediately end the conversation after a complaint that I had come in with was over.
Can you put all of that into like 2 or 3 sentences? Just the things that are important, not everything. About this person, just describe this person. I was 21 and
That's hard.
Vicky came in and you don't have to do it right up.
Right.
It's easier
Okay.
presenting, right?
Okay.
But the point I was trying to make is if you present that story about why you want to be a PA
Okay.
and you're like, I was diagnosed with celiac at 21 and Vicky diagnosed me and that made me want to be a PA.
It's not helpful.
Or
Right.
if you say that, but also say, I really admired Vicky. She was always dressed professionally, simple hoop earrings, flats, slacks. I just thought that she had a very calming demeanor. And then once she changed my life, I realized that's what I want to do for everybody else. Right?
Yep.
So that's question 1.
Okay.
Okay? So that's the biggest reason.
Okay.
Okay? So
Okay.
details.
Okay.
Right?
I feel like that's probably the hardest part for everyone as well.
What's that?
Like condensing all of that into just a couple of sentences.
Not if you have to spoke. But no, literally, so you wanna just kind of unload
Mm-hmm.
everything, all the details, nothing is too small, was it
Okay.
daytime, nighttime, what were they wearing, what did it smell like,
Okay,
you know, everything.
okay,
And then you make that list, you write it down, and then you pick out, okay, this is like, what am I emotionally drawn to?
okay.
Her hoop earrings.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't like crazy, she wasn't trying to make a statement, she was just classy.
Right.
You know, it was about the patient, it wasn't about her.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever you feel about that, and then you just make whatever details are very relevant to you, and you just kind of pepper those in.
Mm-hmm.
And it shows that you really cared about that moment,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Okay,
And that's how you write about every single example that you give.
okay.
Right.
Okay.
Fair?
Yeah.
Good job.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
What advice can you give to those of us who don't have such a, like, exceptional, maybe interaction with someone, or like when you heard about the PA
Mhm.
profession, maybe it was because you were researching jobs in the medical field, or you saw a YouTube video and they talked about it, and you liked it, like, you don't have anything as, you know, detailed maybe to
I
talk
bet you
about.
did. I promise you did. Yeah, I mean, you're signing up for years and hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. You wouldn't do that if you weren't super motivated. You know, I mean, what is it for you?
Like, I guess I'm saying, cause Nicole had like a one-on-one interaction with the PA,
Mhm.
that's how she learned about it, right? But what if I found out about it like on a TikTok of someone talking about the PA
Good.
profession, right? So like, how would I, you know, make that sound a little bit more like elaborate or
Mhm.
like significant?
What if you reframe the question?
Okay.
And it wasn't just why PA, what if it was why medicine?
Mm-hmm.
Or why healthcare?
Okay.
Or why provider instead of, I don't know, CNA?
Okay.
You know, when did you decide you wanted to do medicine? Like, you were looking up healthcare careers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So why healthcare? Why not engineering? No,
Or you're
I'm
asking
literally
me?
asking.
Oh, okay.
This doesn't count for a Starbucks cup, it's gonna be the other
That's
activity. But I'm legitimately curious, cause everybody has a unique, interesting reason for wanting to do this.
Okay, well, okay, so then I have a follow-up question to this, but I actually started my undergraduate, career at VCU, cause I was interested in radiation sciences.
Okay.
And then I started that, taking classes, and I was like, you know what, this isn't for me. And then I
Why?
also found out, because I realized that, like, as a rad tech, like, if I was doing MRI scans, whatever, like, I do have that one-on-one with the patient, but it wasn't, like, to the degree that I wanted it to be,
Mm-hmm.
as involved in, like, care and diagnosing and treating.
Sure.
And then, but I knew I didn't wanna do medicine, cause 4 years med school, you know, the
Mhm.
length of schooling, and then I heard about PA, and I was like, this is awesome, so I transferred.
Mhm.
And then I also knew that I really like neuroscience, so, and then George Mason offers that as like, you know, a major.
Mhm.
So I was like, this is perfect, cause as a PA, you don't have to have like a specific, major undergraduate degree. So I was like, I can continue like my science courses that I like to do, and then also pursue like what I need to do in order to apply to PA school.
Mhm.
So that's why, because at VCU I was, if I wanted to become a rad tech, like it's a certain curriculum that you follow, and
Sure.
I guess I wasn't as interested in those classes as that.
Oh yeah, you're good.
I would be.
I just have to
She doesn't have to come up
So
there,
have to
she's
cough.
good, cause I'm sure the camera can hear you. Yeah, so one very common issue is when you're trying to look for something specific, your brain goes to literally everything, cause it's all connected.
Mhm.
And your answer was like 4 minutes before, yeah. When you switched from rad tech
Mhm.
to wanting to do more. Why did you wanna do more? Was it because you wanted to connect with people? Cause you're like, well, as a rad tech, you get that one-on-one, it's kind of the same, you know, the same boxes checked, right?
Mhm.
Still get to hang out with people, still get to see them, you know, talk to them, comfort them. So it's not that for you. It's you wanted to do more medicine,
Mhm.
right? You wanted to be more involved. And you also said that you want to keep taking science courses and be involved in different things, even though neuro is interesting, other stuff is interesting.
Mhm.
So it's all about the lateral mobility for you, right?
Right.
It's all about practicing at a high level, getting to order tests, interpret them, various kinds of tests. Just because it's not as, you know, a broken bone, doesn't mean it's not some sort of an autoimmune disorder, right?
Mhm.
As a rad tech, you're kind of done at broken bone. So you just wanted more. You're a very intellectually curious person. You want to learn. You never want to stop learning. You never want to feel like you arrived. You want to learn something new every single day. And then you can give some examples from your life. Let's say when you finally mastered something, you got good at something, you immediately gave it up and started doing something else. Am I right? Did that happen for you?
No.
No?
Wait, reword the question again,
So
sorry.
throughout your life, whenever you got really good at something, did you immediately stop and go do something else? Or like, how is this like diverse interest thing for you happen? Cause like you're very interested in a lot of different things. Has it always been like that?
I would say so, yeah, like I've always
Okay.
been good in school at like learning all subjects, right? There
Mhm.
wasn't one that maybe I liked more than another,
Okay.
you know, had different like hobbies, I like reading, all that stuff, so.
Do you have examples of how you're interested in lots of different things? And if not, then maybe this isn't it. You know, maybe it's not the fact that you can jump around to fields. So for you, what really is it? Haven't got there yet?
I guess like, I don't know how to condense it maybe, like I feel like I would have, or I heard like it's too generic to just say like, oh, a lateral mobility, right?
You just
Because
use that word,
everyone
yeah.
would say that.
But if you give an example, then no.
What would be like an example, like maybe I'm not understanding, I guess, the question.
Okay. Well, so lateral mobility and the shorter course of training is
Right.
literally why everyone wants to be a PA.
Right.
Just gonna put that out there. Like, nobody's trying to be a PA for anything but those two reasons. We all wanna practice medicine, don't wanna do it in your case, your 30s, in my case, I didn't wanna be 40 at my first job, right? Like, that sounds awful. So I didn't wanna spend 15 years in school, 12 years in school. That, you still wanna practice medicine, and also you want to not be bound to one specialty. Those are the two reasons. That's like the basics. And then what you put on top of that is your personal reasons, personal examples for wanting those things. So like, when you were researching careers, why did PA jump out at you?
Well, the short schooling, right?
Sure.
And then pursuing any undergraduate degree I wanted.
Okay.
The lateral mobility, being able to switch around, because I
Why?
just knew, I guess a way to say it's like maybe I like constant change, right? I can't be like tied to one thing.
Why?
Because I'm trying to like word it in my head. Cause I don't wanna get bored, I guess, like I don't wanna, I was scared of like, the difference between like PA and med, I feel like I would have gotten burnt out before even like practicing as a provider, right? So the shorter schooling would have solved that for me, right? Because I would have, you know, been challenged enough that I felt okay with being challenged, but not like too tired by the time I got to practice,
You
right?
wouldn't be too tired.
Or like
Well,
too like mentally exhausted.
I get it. You just
and
didn't wanna go
after
through
the
that much
training.
school.
Right.
I get it, but that's not what we're gonna talk about, right? Because we don't wanna say that. We don't wanna
Right,
be like,
right.
oh, I like medicine, but not enough to do something else.
Okay.
Like, you don't wanna say that. Just think about how it sounds. Like, I just didn't wanna be in school for 8 years. Your career's gonna be 30 years, right? And it's
Right.
hard, so, like, that's just not a good point to make. The good point is, I would get bored, right? Have there been times in your life when you can say, like, I've learned this subject matter and now I'm bored and I wanna go do something else? Like, can you give examples from your own life where you do want to just keep learning and growing? Just the radiology one alone is probably an example.
But I've also heard, so I remember writing that as like a little narrative in my essay, and I heard that it's not good to like say that you were interested in something and then you're like, oh, never mind, now I wanna do PA. Or like just
Why
talk
would that
about
be bad?
like, I don't know, that was the advice I was given, I guess, that just talk about like PA being the thing that you like found one time and stuck with it.
I think that's bad advice.
Okay.
When you were saying earlier about like wanting to be a rad tech, and you're like, I really don't wanna do that because like you're not interacting with the patients as much as that you would like. You could say something if you're like interested in more autonomy with the patients or like having more patient interaction, that would, like if you're interested in that being like understanding the patient's history more, or like being involved with their life, you could say something like that because as a rad tech, you just kinda see them and then they go. Right.
But the other thing I've heard
Go
about
ahead.
is like, you have to like do it in a way that's not discrediting the other profession, right? Like talking bad about
Correct.
it.
You never wanna do that.
Right.
Like, I've seen a lot of people basically make a whole paragraph in their essay where it's like, well, I didn't wanna be a doctor because. I wouldn't do that. Talk about the positives of what you do wanna do, not the negatives of what you don't wanna do, right? And for you, I think that we're very close to your main kind of thesis here. You know, I think it is just the constant change, learning more. If you get bored with something, having the opportunity to learn more in a different way. And I think that the way I would go about it if I was writing your essay would be, I would talk about maybe a course you got to and how you could have taken, like, let's say you got Biochem 1, Biochem 2 was offered, you're like, no, I feel like I've had enough Biochem, I really wanna do genetics. Because there was a little tiny bit of genetics in Biochem and I wanna explore that, and I'm super interested, I wanna do something else. you know, and then extrapolate that to your career. Let's say you start in primary care and then neurology just really takes off, you like realize that you're super interested in it, you wanna do that, and then after practicing in that, you realize sciatica is a huge problem and people keep coming to neurologists for that for some reason, now you wanna do ortho, whatever it may be, right? So I would probably phrase it that way, because that's your main reason for wanting to do it. You wanna keep being like interested and having new stuff to learn. Do you feel like that's something you could write about?
Yeah, I think so. Because, like, even, like, the prereqs, if we go to that for a second, like, I genuinely think I've hit, like, all prerequisites of all the schools. Like, I've been able to, like, take those classes and balance them out in a way because I've been interested in all of them, right? So, like, I've taken genetics, ortho, biochem, you know, gen chem, whatever. Oops. And, like, I'm taking pharmacology next semester because I think they're interesting. So, I guess I've never thought of, like, talking about, like, taking all of these classes because I genuinely am interested in all of these classes. Right?
Yeah,
So,
and if your record kinda shows that, backs that up, I don't see why you can't make that as your reason. You know, that's why a lot of people wanna be a PA, cause you can do all this other stuff, you know? So why wouldn't you just talk about that? Also demonstrate, yeah, you're a caring person, you wanna kind of be able to do more for people than just, you know, take pictures of them, right? Take their x-rays, take their MRIs, but that doesn't have to be your primary reason. The primary reason could be you're very intellectually curious, you wanna be able to explore that, and you never wanna feel pigeonholed. And then, maybe from your shadowing, if you can kinda give examples of that and just be like, no, that really hit home, I really wanted to do that. Like I shadowed Jake, the PA at the ER, who was also working part-time at a neurosurgery practice, cause he had experience, so he got to be in the ER, in the OR, he got to admit people in the ER and then go operate on them later, and then even follow up on them in the clinic when he was in primary care, like that kind of stuff. And that was like, wow, I just can't imagine like a career where I get to do all of that, which is PA. Right? The gears are turning, I can tell.
I just, so